I just wanted to acknowledge the words of Representative Rubio. Thank you for your leadership. You belong here. And to the other women in these spaces, pursue advocacy and claim the space that you clearly belong in. I need to acknowledge the land that we are on of the Ohlone people. It is right to honor the earth that sustains us, nourishes us, and recognize the relationship that we have to the site as guests. I want to remind you that no matter where you are, when you leave this conference and go back to your home, that you are on Indian land. Prayers have been said and offerings have been made on the land below your feet. Remember that we walk on sacred places. He's Yakima, Kalispell, Nisqually, Squaxin Island, and Chief Kangari, Chief Ignis, Chief Kamaikan, or Chief Leshad. He knew his Wiscoyuskape, Hill, and she baby girl is Wiscoy, up into the way it's built. I it's late, Aki, Jimna, Aki, Dodoba, Jimukwa 8. In our ways, we introduce ourselves in our language. My name is Kwele, which means meadowlark. And meadowlarks bring good medicine and songs in the morning. I hope to bring that to you today. My English name is Nikki Petrie. I'm a member of the Coeur d'Alene tribe and a direct descendant of 4 chiefs who I have named to you in my language. A direct descendant. Their blood runs through me, and for that I'm very proud. My mother's name is Yoskape, which means snowbird, and my daughter's name is Apple Rains Uten, which means carries the medicine. If you want to know who I am, you need to know who my family is, so it's an honor to introduce them to you. As the Associate Director, I want to share a little bit with you about how we were founded in 2011. The center was founded by Senator Byron Dorgan of North Dakota, who instead of running for re-election, put $1 million of his unused campaign funds to create the center with a main focus on Native youth suicide. What you may not know is that suicide disproportionately affects Native American people at 3.5 times the rate of the national average. A majority of those falling in the ages of 10 to 24 years old. That's our children. Those are our sacred little ones in the next generation. To address this epidemic was the core foundation of the work that the Center for Native American Youth does today. CNAY has 4 pillars of work, one of which we'll be diving into more deeply. Those pillars are narrative change, ensuring that Native youth get to share their stories in their voice, policy and advocacy, working with the administration, Congress, and federal agencies to have Native youth at the forefront of policy and legislation that impacts them, a resource hub connecting Native youth leaders to organizations and vice versa, and lastly, leadership and empowerment. We have several programs at the Center for Native American Youth that support leadership, which I am so proud to support. This includes our Champions for Change program, which Damien Carlos is a part of, where 5 youth are recognized each year for positive change in their community that we do. This provides including giving folks like Damien a platform, resource, and technical assistance to support youth leadership. We also have a local recognition program where we work with tribal communities to have a meaningful relationship with high school youth to provide them with the resources and leadership skills that they need. A fairly new program housed at the Center for Native American Youth is called Fresh Tracks. Fresh Tracks brings together youth from urban, rural, and tribal communities for a 72-hour immersive cross-cultural leadership experience through the outdoors. Youth leaders learn from their peers who are trainers on the subjects of narrative change, civic engagement, culture share, implicit bias, community organizing, and lastly, community action. We work alongside our partners at the Children in Nature Network to host these convenings. We are so grateful for Sarah, CJ, Juan, Monica, and of course, my right hand, Jen, who is here today. Along with others in the room who have helped to bring up young leaders through the outdoors. In 2018, we hosted 4 regional trainings in Essex Woods, Massachusetts, Cal State Long Beach in California, Indiana Dunes, Dunes Moving Center in Indiana, and Ghost Ranch in New Mexico. As a team, CNAY and CNN have learned lessons, are on the road of constant improvement and learning and looking ahead for additional resources for the future of a truly transformative program. Before we dive into this panel, I want to share with you why the outdoors has shaped who I am today as a student woman. In our way, the word is miyek, which roughly translates to the truth of a lifelong lesson. Not something that you learn in the classroom, but a true lifelong lesson that shapes you to your core. You see, our indigenous ways of knowing are all connected to nature. We have ceremonies, community gatherings, and cultural happenings, all that take place in the outdoors. My people, the Civic, the Quarterly People's traditional lands, are in what is known today as Eastern Washington through Western Montana. Today our reservation is on a tiny plot of land in North Idaho, just below the city of Coeur d'Alene. We were placed here, like many tribal communities, because colonizers did not believe that we would last the harsh winters, not realizing that it is through our connection with the land that makes us the most resilient of people. Northwest, but our terrain is the most beautiful terrain. I am proud that the most important lessons have been taught to me in this area of my people's land. The mountains are our grandpas, our sila. Sila protects us from the elements. Our sila have been here long before we have been here, and they'll be here long after we are gone. These mountains teach us that we don't need to be loud and boastful to be recognized as strong. The Sila teaches us that when we face adversity, that we stand our ground and we weather the storm. The trees, Kwai salt, cedar trees are our medicine. Kwai salt teaches us that if we want to provide medicine to others and to stand strong, we must first be deeply rooted. Sikwe is water, and water is life. Sikwe gives us life, and we must care for the Sikwe. The way the Civic has cared for us, please take care of our Civic. The plants that grow on top of fallen trees and logs in the forest show us that we grow on the foundation of the ones who walked before us. You see, the miyek is that we stand on the shoulders of our Tzutun, which are our ancestors. We stay connected to our ways through the roots that are deeply connected to that fallen tree, or our Tzutun. In our ways, the wind is our medicine. If we listen closely, the wind will carry stories of our grandmothers. When we face a hard time, let that wind flow through you, and let everything that you're going through flow through you. Listen to it as it teaches you, for it holds the songs and stories of our Tzutun. I need to share with you, these are not simply concepts. No, these are our truth. This is my miyek. With these miyek, without a doubt, it is without a doubt that the land that we are on today is sacred. Thank you for allowing me to share a little bit of my truth with you. This is why I'm so passionate about the work of Fresh Tracks and the power of youth healing through the outdoors because of these truths. I'm honored to share the stage with a key member of our Fresh Tracks program, Dr. Sharon Little. I get emotional when I look at her sometimes. She provides an evaluation framework, data analysis, and a life-changing session at Fresh Tracks on implicit bias. On a personal note, Sharon has continuously inspired me as a woman of color in this space. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Sharon Little.
Thank you guys so much for being here, and I appreciate the introduction. I'm just going to give a quick introduction of myself and then let our youth really speak, and I'll be sharing a little bit later about the evaluation and sharing a little bit about the implicit bias. But really my message today is this advocacy. I want to thank Sarah and the entire organization, because we can continue to talk as a society about the challenges, or we can get about being active. And I think we have talked enough, and we have put the responsibility of those who are most marginalized to fix the problems when we know that systems are very intentional. And we have to be honest about confronting systems and changing systems and not trying to build more resilient young leaders, although they are fierce. We have to stop putting the responsibility solely on their shoulders. And so I'm appreciative to be a part of Fresh Tracks. I've been a part of it for the past 3 years as an evaluator. I am born and raised and still live in Compton, California. And I'm excited about that because one of the main components of Fresh Tracks is personal narrative and defining yourself. And I know many people, when they hear City of Compton, they conjure up very different perceptions and images. But one thing that I know, having lived there my entire life, and like many communities across our country, is that everything in terms of power, in terms of insight, was poured into me in Compton, California. Because I saw families, I saw parents who love their children, love their families, love their communities, and they persist day in and day out. And so for me, that is where my foundation is. My mother, my family, my church, my community. And I feel blessed to be part of Fresh Tracks and to learn from the youth that participate in this program. Because again, as adults, we often think that we have the answers, but
I'd like to just introduce themselves and share a little bit about their work with Fresh Tracks.
Civic, Ania Nadjugi, Damien Carlos, Ania Namju, Hawanaki, the District of Picture, Ania Boko, Honko, Aida. So, good morning, my name is Damien. I come from San Isidro Village, also known as Croy, in the Strip District of the Donald Nation, from southern Arizona. And I'm 21 years old. I'm a student at Donald Community College. And at home, I'm part of this program I helped create called the Oakland Peace Alliance. It's something like a youth council for the district, open to youth 13 to 24 years old. And the main purpose of it is to provide opportunities for our youth at home to learn, experience, and be a part of Oakland culture, learn about our language, things our people have been doing for thousands of years. And yeah, so that's what I've been working on for the last 2.5 years. And through that, I've had community members nominate me for different programs like Center for Native American Youth Champions for Change program. And it's taken me to DC a couple times so far, and many other places. And I started getting into this, bringing back culture, because culture is what helped me heal when I was 15. I never learned much about my culture. I knew I was Native, but never knew anything really, because I lived off the res, lived in California, lived in the cities. And so when I moved to the reservation, I was 15. At that time, there's a lot of stuff going on with my family, dealing with things like alcoholism. And I saw a lot of stuff growing up, and it put me in a dark space. I thought I was like worthless, and I didn't think much of myself. But when I moved home, people started teaching me about culture, and I got to be a part of the ceremony. And ever since then, I've been trying to learn as much as I can, and that's what's helped me heal. And I made it through. I'm a little older now, and all the problems that I had in my life growing up, around when I was like 19, they all started wrapping up, I guess. That's the way to put it. And now, being older, I see the youth coming up behind me that are in the high schools, in the middle schools, And I see a lot of them going through the same things that I did. So I feel like now I'm at a stage where I let them know I've been through it and I can help them, show them something. And that's what the program I'm going to talk about. So, thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Chandler Legal. I am 23 years old and from Kansas City, Missouri. I graduated from the University of Missouri, Kansas City last spring. I had the opportunity to attend the Fresh Tracks Midwest training program last August. I am Lakota Sioux, currently enrolled with the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe in South Dakota. The Fresh Tracks training program was very valuable for me as a young leader. After graduating college and getting into the world and getting a job, I was a little unsure of leadership skills, and Fresh Tracks really helped me build those skills. During the program, we had seminars on understanding what it's like to work in diverse communities. Those skills have been extremely valuable to me as I work as an AmeriCorps Vista for a nonprofit organization called Heartland Conservation Alliance. And being at Vista, I work in low-income and diverse communities. So those skills have really helped enhance my leadership skills, communication skills, helping empower communities. The capacity building aspect was also really powerful. I recently was elected to my local city council. So Fresh Tracks really helped me learn effective ways of giving community presentations, of empowering community members, and really giving me the confidence, really, that I needed in developing a strong base, being a young leader in our community, and a young Native leader at that, because growing up in urban community in Kansas City, there isn't a strong Native American population in Kansas City, so Fresh Tracks really helped me identify what it meant to be a young Native woman in politics, as a leader in my community, and those skills have been incredibly valuable to me. So, and allowed me to be able to have a platform to sit here and explain my story and my journey through leadership. So I'm very thankful to be here.
Damien, your work with your youth group and your tribal community connects place and nature. Can you share the importance as an Indigenous person about connecting to the land, and how Champions for Change and Fresh Tracks supports this connection?
So, like I said, growing up, I didn't know a lot about my culture. And I was born in Galvin, Mexico. My father was in the United States Marine Corps, lived in Camp Pendleton in Oceanside, California for a little bit. I moved back to Galvin. And then the next year, I moved to the reservation, Don Mountain Reservation. I was there 3rd to 6th grade. Moved off the res to 3 Points. I was there 7th and 8th grade. Moved to Tucson for my freshman year of high school, Foreign Laws. And then I went to a different high school in Tucson, Sunnyside. And then I moved back to reservation. And all that time growing up, there was a lot of stuff going on at home. Made me feel worthless, and it was a really hard time. But when I moved back to the reservation in high school, like I said, I got invited to be part of a ceremony, and I got to earn a shell necklace. And for the autumn, the ocean is a really powerful place. Because living in the desert, we don't have, it's hard to get water, except in the summer when it rains. So the shells come from the ocean, so it's a good blessing to have. And I had that explained to me that day, and I remember feeling like all the weight from all the things I've been through started coming off a little bit. And the more I learned, the more I healed. I got to learn about traditional stories, songs, and there's a lot of lessons in the smallest details of anything in Native cultures. With singing or autumn, you have to make your own rattles, and in the smallest details of making it, there's a lot of information packed in, and it helps guide you through life. And I guess those things helped me heal and think about the things I went through a little more deeply and see how they affected me, and really helped me grow into a stronger person. And now I see that, to be Native means you come from a place and you have a long history behind you. And when that's cut off, it makes us feel lonely and worthless. And of course, I didn't know that I was missing something while I was going through all that stuff with my family. But as I got older and I knew more about my culture, knew more about myself, I was able to piece that together. I was just missing something that gave me an identity and let me know who I was. And the reasons that I wasn't connected that way are part of a larger history with Native people and our American history. And that's what Center for Native American Youth has helped me realize. The first time I went, they went through so many workshops talking about Native history and teaching me about government and Congress and the Senate, all these things about national government that I never really knew or cared to learn about. But, it's helped me see the bigger picture, I guess, and I see how these things in DC have widespread effects that reach to our people, and I can see how they affected me today, and my parents, my grandparents, and I've been trying to teach that to the youth I work with, and now I just feel like an old man. I see a lot of youth that remind me of myself when I was in high school, and it's a little frustrating, and then I think about how I was in high school, so it's like payback or something. And Fresh Tracks has taught me a lot about leadership that changed. Both of them together have taught me a lot about Oakland policies. So to start our group in our district, I had to go to our district council many times and draft resolutions, get them passed, and there's a lot of stuff I never really thought I'd be doing, and it's been very frustrating, but it was worth it. In October, we had a resolution from our district creating a group as a program in the district, and in January, we had our bylaws passed. So earlier this month, actually, we had our first official elections. I had been acting as we called it acting president for the last 2.5 years, but we had our first official elections, and I decided to nominate a boy from home. His name's Terrell Francisco. He's 16, and he frustrates me so much, but he I don't know, I see a lot of myself in him, so I guess that's why I chose him, and I think that's what our program is all about, giving youth a chance to do something, and I hope him and all the other youth I work with will start to see that the outcome, start to look for their own skills, and I just have to keep giving them chances to develop. And so all that's how Fresh Tracks and Sense needs to help me.
Thank you, Jamie. It's been such an honor to watch you grow as a leader, but you still have the same kind of funny, quirky traits. Like Jen told me you randomly FaceTimed her the other day. But thank you so much for your leadership. And Chandler, congratulations on being elected to your city council. What an honor. Can you share the work that you are doing in the spaces of environmental activism?
Yeah, absolutely. So that all started actually with the involvement with environmental justice issues with my tribe, the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe. In 2016, I was involved in the protest with the Dakota Access Pipeline, and that, my contribution in that event, my participation in that event really gave me a sense of the bigger picture with environmental issues in the world, and really empowered me and showed me that real change is possible when people come together and they're passionate about an issue. And the whole experience was so empowering for me that I changed my major in college. I decided to study environmental science, and I just had an overwhelming sense of purpose to continue working in my community. And ultimately, it inspired me to do the AmeriCorps Vista program in Kansas City, Missouri, working with low-income communities in Kansas City who do suffer from environmental justice issues. And my goal is to create an outdoor education program for people in these underserved and low-income communities that is accessible. It is representative of their community, and empowering for them also.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wall, you provide a session during Fresh Tracks on implicit bias, which forces us to identify and break down barriers. Every time I watch your presentation, I get emotional, inspired, and I dedicate myself to do better. Can you tell us more about the implicit bias session?
Sure. And as we have heard from these youth leaders, Fresh Tracks really is a distinctive model of leadership development, because what it does is that it looks at core areas as it relates to civic engagement, as it relates to environmental stewardship, as it relates to how we can impact systems, but all of that has to be done from a foundation of identity. And you've heard a little bit about how identity really shapes one's view of themselves, and the affirmation of whether or not someone can navigate this world. Before we can say that we can move from a frame of leadership and be empowered, if we are confronting on a daily basis perceptions and stereotypes and biases simply by the way that we look, or simply from where we are, it really can impact the outcomes, especially for youth. And so for the implicit bias, we said if we are developing leaders for a global world, that they will lead and they will learn, then we need to ensure that we confront. We bring youth together, as was already stated, for example, from rural, from native, from urban environments. And what we found is that a lot of them have heard about one another in their community, but they've never engaged with one another. And this work is relational. This is a human endeavor. And all of us are prone to biases. We have biases about who deserves to have free space, who deserves to be in the outdoors, who deserves to be able to wake up and go to the beach. And again, as we said, these biases are systemic, and they are perpetuated intentionally. And we have to be honest about confronting the biases that we have even when we're in the room seeking to do good. We have to ask ourselves, why are we working on behalf of certain communities? Not because they are marginalized, but because systems have intentionally disallowed them to be at the table. And so for us, we said we wanted to be very thoughtful about, as we engage leaders, as we provide them strategies for civic engagement and community action, that they don't perpetuate those systems of stereotypical thoughts, that they don't go out and injure communities the way that they've been injured. And I think it speaks volumes as we hear these young leaders speak about the fact that despite circumstances, they're willing to run for office. They're willing to be, quote unquote, old men. I don't know, Damien, if you're an old man, I don't know what that makes me, a young woman. But it's imperative that we see how our biases, and so what we do is that we engage from a very experiential perspective in the implicit bias training. I show actually a video where I put up USC, which is a university where I teach, and straight out of Compton. And I ask the young leaders, what do those two images have to do with one another? And it's very interesting, the conversation. It often will go to, well, this community is this and this community is that, because of course the media perpetuates certain narratives, some of which are true in some capacity. But when I say it's about me personally, there's somewhat of a disconnect. They're like, oh, Professor Little, you grew up in Compton and you're a professor. Where do you live now? I said, I live in Compton. And they kind of tilt their head and they say, they don't pay you enough? I said, yes, they pay me enough, and that's why I choose to reinvest in my own community. And I tell children, it doesn't matter where you move, but we want to be careful not to perpetuate a narrative of cultural deficit. It has to be an asset base, because all of these communities, I can name a laundry list of people who have come from Compton, and I tell them, be careful how you shape a narrative of escapism. I want to hurry up and leave because their baby's still in the community, but also you devalue their experiences. And so for me, it was imperative that, as we said, we want young leaders at the end of this process to know that they are not only in a position of power to enact change, but they're well equipped. They have the strategy. They have the organizational skills. They can go out and empower their communities, but they have the right framing. One of our group activities is that they have to come up with a very specific action plan. And I'll never forget all of the programs that were proposed, but one in particular, a young group, they came up with the hashtag, "You will not define us." You cannot define us. And that was part of that implicit bias in confronting that. And so for me, when they go through these processes and go through the 72 hours immersed, when they look at one another, even if they conjure up some stereotypical images or thoughts, I want them to immediately check themselves and say, where did that come from? But more importantly, how can I counteract that? And not from a place of division. We don't have to dislike each other to call out one another's challenges. We can speak truth to each other and still be in community. And that's important for me. And so with the implicit bias, that's what we seek to do. And then when we have our cultural share, I can now better understand what it means to be on the reservation and not have an assumption about what has been perpetuated. I can better understand, as one of our young leaders who brought about change in his university because of his involvement with Fresh Tracks, he confronted the administration and he changed Columbus Day to Indigenous Day because he said this is all based upon biases and implicit biases about my people. How many of you, by show of hands, have heard of Iroquois? I'm pronouncing it right? The Iroquois. Okay, just a couple of people. But how many of you have heard about the Constitution? Okay, I know everybody's hand. But we don't know the real origin of how the Iroquois Confederacy actually was the blueprint for the Constitution. So those narratives have to be unpacked, and we have to be intentional about confronting history. As I think about in America, the land for the natives, they always understood the physical and mental benefits of being in the land. But because we've intentionally stripped people of that legacy and history, now we are in 2019 trying to come up with a rationale why children should not grow up in concrete jungles. It's not accidental that there are not parks in certain communities. It's intentional. Go back and look at the history of redlining and zoning and housing. It's intentional, and we have to confront that.
One of my favorite memories with Dr. Little is we did the implicit bias, and then we went up into the mountains.
Yeah, definitely. And I think youth have this ability to I don't know what word I'm looking for, but when someone tells us, like, when we find out a thing isn't going to work, we'll always try to pick it up and look at it again and keep trying it. That's what I've learned with my youth group for the past 2 years, trying to work with our district council. And how many times we brought those bylaws into the meetings and we got denied every time. And it's just keep getting up and then back at it again. And I also think we're not afraid to try new things. One of the main concerns with like all our events we've done so far is having enough adult chaplains there, but I think district council, a lot of the older people in our communities who kind of have trouble remembering, like, I'm like 21 now. I work at the school. I have, the fingerprint clearance cards. I have all these things, but they still think of me as like a little kid, and it's frustrating sometimes. But I think we do have the ability to step up to things we need to, we want to, and we are not afraid to try new things. Like, that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Something that we learned at Fresh Tracks is to never be afraid to use your voice, even when it shakes. And I feel like Damien and the work that he does with his youth council kind of embody that teaching. Chandler, I had the honor of meeting you at Fresh Tracks, Indiana. In the short time that we had together, I watched you grow as a leader. What is an important takeaway that you learned at the Fresh Tracks training that you still use today?
For me, an important takeaway were the appreciation and importance of understanding diverse communities and the support of the other young leaders that I received that were also part of the Fresh Tracks training program. It was really inspiring for me to see that I'm not the only one trying to be a leader in my community and trying to understand what that means. And having the support of other young leaders was extremely valuable to me. I made really close connections. To people I feel like I could contact anytime and talk to. So just that support base is really important.
Thank you. Dr. Little, as the evaluator of the Fresh Tracks program, you survey the youth leaders, you analyze the data, and you have compiled an amazing report. Can you share with us some of the findings through your evaluation?
Sure, and I just want to give a quick framing of how the evaluation was developed. And so from the beginning of this program, it was important to not only devise a curriculum and a strategy that would generate the outcomes that we were seeking, the embodiment that is represented here today. Young leaders who understood very specifically, because of knowledge and skills and tools that they would develop throughout the program, ways in which to identify an issue or issues within their community, to learn organizing skills, to be equipped culturally, to understand components of leadership and what servant leadership looks like and various models of leadership looks like, all around the framing of the outdoors and its benefit. And then recognize ways in which they can impact. And so from the beginning we said what would be, right, the logic model, what were the objectives that we wanted to seek, and how could we then measure both short-term and long-term impact of the investment in these young people And as you will imagine, this will be a continuous process because it will be lifelong impacts. Some that will be more measurable and more quantitative or qualitative measures, but then again, some that are more anecdotal, that we will continue to capture in stories and in focus groups and, more importantly, in the examples of the work that they produce. And so we wanted to have a very clear triangulation strategy. We wanted to not just rely on, as we said, traditional, but we also informed the evaluation with indigenous strategies, which I think is very important because, again, from being an evaluator and having been trained very traditionally, we also have to understand the nuance of cultural investment and how others tell their story, which is really what we're trying to capture. And so we used a pre and post quantitative measure which incorporated proven indicators around self-esteem, around civic engagement, around leadership. And we also looked at the program and wanted to know how can this program, being very intentional with the curricula, produce a solid foundation, whether it be around leadership, whether it be around cultural identity, as we said, civic engagement and organizing, and how then can we utilize that within the 72 hours. And all of the, especially the staff, they love me now, but those weekends, they don't want to see me because I don't care what's going on. I said, where is that survey? Is it completed? And I need to know the completion rates. And so, but the beauty of that is that oftentimes we do this work and we hope for outcomes, but we don't really know the impact. And we have to be, one, more thoughtful about the why we're doing this, but also the how we're doing this and the impact. Because we are all wanting to see change, and we should know it could be a very positive message that we're doing this right, and that's what the evaluation has shown. This is a proven, distinctive, differentiated model, and all of the components combined and the intentionality of that make the outcomes that we seek. And so, when you have young people as adults, it's challenging to say, I am a leader, I want to change my community, and I have the tools, the knowledge, and the skills to go about and do that. Very few people actually move on that and accomplish it. So we've seen through the measurements, and again, as I said, we do a quantitative pre-post, we have a daily evaluation to capture, we've done focus groups, individual interviews, we have all of the participants share different stories, and this year we incorporated a webinar, which was post-program, where we allowed individuals to share some of the outcomes as you all are hearing today. And so with that triangulation strategy, we can confidently say that across the spectrum, across the continuum, that we have increases around understanding what leadership means. What does it mean to be a leader as it relates to listening, as it relates to having a clear strategy, as it relates to capacity building? One of the key outcomes with Sonny, who I shared a bit earlier about the changes he made at his university, he said, Professor Little, one of the core leadership skills that I gained at Fresh Tracks was understanding how to navigate people who disagreed with me. It's easy to bring people along who are part of your choir. Yep. It's quite difficult to make a compelling case without creating division and say, I need you to come along and rethink and relook at this situation. And that takes a lot of strategy and skill. And he gained that from that immersive, very specific, and interaction at Fresh Tracks, and we were able to capture that. And so for me, as an evaluator, but more importantly, as someone who is invested in the community, the outcomes were very rewarding, both from the evaluation, as I said, the various measures that we use, but these stories and the impact of the community are ultimately our best outcome.
All right, so my last question for Damien and Chandler is, what does the future hold?
So earlier I said I was a student at TOCC. I just finished my fourth semester there. I still have one class left, so I'll be taking that in the fall. After that, I think I'm trying to go to ASU. But for now, like I said, we had our first official elections with my youth league. I'm secretary now, so I feel like that weight was lifted off my shoulders, so that feels good. But there's a whole group of 15 to 16-year-olds on there now. I'm one of the older ones, so I guess I'm trying to teach them all the stuff I've been learning for the last 2.5 years. And I hope they don't burn it down while I'm gone. Really, so when we first started the group, it was pretty much me and my friend Joaquin Martinez and our two little brothers. And we're all from the same village, so that was pretty crazy. For me, our village is called Croquet because it used to be a field village in the summer. That's where we grew our crops. And we moved to a winter village. That's how Oakland lived back in the day. And growing, it's called crowing because there's this man who was growing his corn and the crows were flying around and he didn't want them eating his stuff, so he killed one of them, hung it up on the fence. And people would see that. So I've always been interested in the agriculture part of our hymn. And other side, Joaquin was really into the rain ceremony that our people do. And with that, you have to go pick bybatch, the saguaro fruit from the saguaro cactus, you know, the one with the arm. That was my first time learning how to pick and cook the fruit. And for the last 2 years, we've been trying to set up a community garden, but this year is finally happening. We've been working the last couple of months putting up the fencing. Just got the gate put up the day before I came out here. And it's on its way. Last November, we had a camp in our winter village called Wild Book, and all the elders in the community were really happy about that. When I told them about how the camp went the next day, all my grandmas were crying, so I think I'm doing good. And yeah. And I'm just one Oakland kid. There's a whole group of Oakland my age, and we're all really into bringing back our culture. And I think we're heading in the right direction. This year, I'm hoping we'll be able to harvest from our garden, pick wild foods for the summer, and when we have our camp again in November, we'll be able to feed all the youth all our Oakland foods. And I don't know how long it's been since we've been able to do that. And I guess this is what I want my life to be, just living off the land, teaching the youth, and that's all I got so far.
For me, the future holds creating the outdoor education pilot program as part of my AmeriCorps Vista service. So I plan to write grants to have it funded so that the next Vista that comes on in August when my service ends has everything they need to put the plan into action. After my year of service, my plan is to continue the University of Missouri-Kansas City School of Law. My preferred field of study is urban policy, land use, and environmental law. And in my community, I hope to write grants for a community garden. The community that I work in specifically is considered a food desert because it's not close to grocery stores, so I would like to restore a couple of vacant lots in the community to a community-sustained and built garden.
Thank you so much, especially to this panel. I'm just continually inspired and motivated to continue this good work. To those in the room, my call to action is simple. When you discuss the outdoors and nature, remember Indigenous people. Remember our truths, remember our resiliency, and remember to include us at your tables, not to tokenize us, but to allow us to participate and contribute in meaningful ways, just like we did this morning. Limage in just ooze, a heartfelt thank you.